What if I told you there's a simple, silent ritual that could change your financial life overnight? Would you do it? And what if I told you thousands of people have already done it? But no one talks about what happened after. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of someone who did. Someone who was desperate, at rock bottom, with no way out. Someone who thought they had found the perfect solution. But the truth is, some pacts don't end when you get what you asked for. They just begin. If you enjoy disturbing stories that make you question how far you'd go for money, subscribe to the channel now, because what you're about to hear won't leave your mind anytime soon. Lucas was 32 years old when his life collapsed. He lost his job at an accounting firm after the company downsized. At first, he thought it would be temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month. He had savings. He had time. But weeks turned into months, and the savings disappeared faster than he expected. Rent, bills, food, debt. He applied everywhere. Hundreds of resumes sent into the void. A few interviews that led nowhere. The responses became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. 6 months later, Lucas was drowning. He had maxed out 2 credit cards. His landlord had given him a final notice. 14 days to pay 3 months of rent, or he'd be evicted. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from collection agencies. He stopped answering. He stopped checking his email. He stopped looking at his bank account because seeing the negative balance made his chest tighten so much he couldn't breathe. One night, sitting alone in his dark apartment with only his laptop screen for light, Lucas typed into a search engine something he never thought he would. How to get money fast. Desperate. The first results were the usual garbage. Payday loans with criminal interest rates. Surveys that paid pennies. Plasma donation centers. He scrolled past all of it. He wasn't looking for pennies. He needed thousands. And he needed it now. Then, buried on the 5th page of results, he found a link to a forum. The website looked ancient. Plain text. No images. The kind of site that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. But the thread title caught his eye. Financial Pact. It works. Instructions inside. Lucas clicked. The original post was short. No name attached. Just a username made of random numbers. I was where you are. Broke. Desperate. Out of options. I found this ritual online and tried it as a last resort. Within a week, money started appearing. I'm not joking. I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling you it works. Do it at your own risk. Below that, dozens of replies. Most of them said the same thing. It worked. I can't believe it, but it actually worked. Don't ask questions. Just do it. You'll see. I did this 3 months ago and I'm still getting money. I don't know how. I don't care. Lucas scrolled through the entire thread. 100 replies. Maybe more. Not a single person said it didn't work. Not one. At the bottom of the original post, there were instructions. Simple. Too simple. At midnight, alone, write your full name on a blank piece of paper. Below it, write the exact amount of money you need. Sign it with a drop of your own blood. Burn the paper completely. Collect the ashes and place them under your bed. Leave them there for 7 days. Do not look at them. Do not touch them. Do not tell anyone what you did. That was it. No chanting. No candles. No symbols. Just paper, blood, fire, and silence. Lucas read it 3 times. He told himself it was insane. Superstitious nonsense. The kind of thing bored teenagers made up to scare each other. But he also thought about the eviction notice on his kitchen counter. The calls he wasn't answering. The bridge he'd driven past last week and the thought that had crossed his mind when he looked over the railing. He had nothing left to lose. That night, at 11:47 p.m., Lucas sat at his kitchen table with a blank sheet of printer paper in front of him. He wrote his full name in pen. Below it, he wrote the number. $20,000. Enough to cover rent. Pay off the credit cards. Buy himself a few months to figure things out. He stared at the paper for a long time. Then he went to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a sewing needle, and pricked the tip of his index finger. A bead of blood welled up, dark and bright under the yellow overhead light. He pressed his finger to the paper, leaving a smudged red mark next to his signature. It looked ridiculous, like something a kid would do playing pretend. Lucas almost laughed, but he didn't. He took the paper to the bathroom, held it over the sink, and lit the corner with a lighter. The paper curled and blackened, flames eating through his name, through the number, through the blood. Within seconds, it was gone, just ash and smoke. He collected the ashes carefully with a piece of tissue, carried them to his bedroom, and placed them in a small dish under his bed, far back against the wall where he wouldn't accidentally kick it. Then he stood there in the dark, feeling like an idiot. Nothing happened. No wind. No voices. No cold chill. Just silence. Lucas went to bed and fell asleep thinking he'd wasted his time. But 3 days later, something changed. He woke up to a notification on his phone. A deposit had been made to his checking account. $372. The description read, "Refund, processing error." Lucas stared at it. He hadn't returned anything. He hadn't bought anything in weeks. He called his bank. They confirmed the deposit was legitimate but couldn't tell him where it came from. Some automated system error, they said. A refund that had been pending for months. Lucas didn't remember any pending refunds. But he didn't argue. 2 days later, another deposit. $800. This time labeled state tax rebate. He hadn't filed for a rebate. The day after that, he received a check in the mail. From a distant uncle he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The note attached said the uncle had passed away and left Lucas a portion of his estate. $12,000. Lucas sat on his couch, holding the check, his hands trembling. It was the 7th day. He went to his bedroom, got down on his knees and looked under the bed. The dish was still there, but the ashes were gone. For the first time in months, Lucas could breathe. He paid his rent in full. All 3 months, plus the next 2 in advance. His landlord looked at him like he'd won the lottery. In a way, he had. He paid off both credit cards. Watched the balances drop to 0. Felt surreal. Like watching a countdown he thought would never end suddenly stop. He went to the grocery store and filled his cart without checking prices. He bought fresh vegetables, real coffee, a steak, things he hadn't let himself have in almost a year. For the first time since losing his job, Lucas smiled at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. But the money didn't stop. Every few days something new appeared. A former employer sent him a settlement check for unused vacation days. He didn't remember having any unused days. It didn't matter. Another $1,500. A class action lawsuit he didn't know he was part of paid out. $200. An old savings bond his grandmother had bought for him when he was a kid matured. $3,000. Kept coming. Lucas stopped questioning it. He stopped trying to figure out where it was coming from. He just accepted it. He started going out again. He met friends for drinks. He bought new clothes, got a haircut. He even went on a date with a woman he matched with online. She complimented his confidence. He felt like a different person, like himself again. But small things started to feel wrong. At first, he thought he was imagining it. He woke up every night at exactly 3:33 a.m. Not 3:30, not 3:35, always 3:33. He jolt awake, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, with no memory of a nightmare. Just the feeling that something had been in the room with him. He started smelling something, faint but constant, like burnt paper. It clung to his clothes, his sheets. Even after he showered, it was still there, and he felt watched. Not all the time, but in quiet moments. When he was alone in his apartment, when he walked to his car at night, when he stood in front of the mirror brushing his teeth. Like someone was standing just behind him, just out of sight. He'd turn around. Nothing. Lucas told himself he was stressed, adjusting. His body was still catching up to the fact that the crisis was over. That's all it was. But deep down, in a place he didn't want to look, he knew. He knew the moment he burned that paper, something had hurt him. And now something was waiting. What do you think is happening to Lucas? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still watching, stay with me, because this is where things start to fall apart. It started with his best friend. Carlos called him one afternoon, voice shaking. He'd been in a car accident. T-boned at an intersection by someone who ran a red light. The car was totaled. Carlos was okay, mostly. A concussion. Bruised ribs. But he kept saying the same thing over and over. I don't understand, man. I swear the light was green. I swear it. Lucas tried to comfort him. Told him he was lucky to be alive. But when he hung up, he felt cold. A week later, his mother called. She'd collapsed at work. They'd rushed her to the hospital. Tests showed a mass in her abdomen. The doctors didn't know what it was yet, but they were running more tests. She tried to sound calm, but Lucas could hear the fear in her voice. He visited her that night, sat by her hospital bed, held her hand. She looked so small under the white sheets. I don't understand, she whispered. I've been feeling fine. This came out of nowhere. Lucas said nothing, because he was starting to understand. 2 weeks later, his ex-girlfriend texted him. They hadn't spoken in months. She'd been the one to break up with him, right before he lost his job. He'd been bitter about it. But now, seeing her name on his screen, he just felt dread. She told him she'd lost her job. Budget cuts, they said. But she'd been Employee of the Year 2 years in a row. It didn't make sense. And now her car had been repossessed. And her apartment had a mold infestation that was making her sick. And everything was falling apart. I don't know what I did to deserve this, she wrote. Lucas stared at the message for a long time. Then he closed it without replying. He went to his bedroom, got down on his knees, looked under the bed. The dish was still there, still empty. But now, in the center, there was something else. A single strand of hair. Not his. Lucas backed away slowly. His hands were shaking. He tried to tell himself it was coincidence. People got into accidents. People got sick. People lost jobs. It happened every day. It had nothing to do with him. But the smell was getting stronger. Burnt paper. Something else underneath it. Something rotten. He stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard whispers. Too faint to understand. But he knew they were saying his name. He started losing weight. Not from exercise. He just couldn't eat. His stomach felt full of something heavy and cold. Food tasted like ash. His friends noticed. You look like hell, man, Carlos said. Are you okay? Lucas lied. Said he was fine. Just stressed about job hunting. But he wasn't job hunting. He was researching. He went back to the forum where he'd found the ritual. Spent hours searching for the thread. It was gone. Not deleted. Not archived. Just gone. He searched for keywords. Tried to find cached versions. Asked other users if they remembered it. No one did. It was like it had never existed. Lucas tried to reverse it on his own. He wrote another paper. His name. A message begging to undo the pact. He burned it just like before. Nothing happened. The money kept coming. And the people around him kept suffering. Carlos got into another accident. This time worse. He'd be in physical therapy for months. Lucas's mother was diagnosed with cancer. Stage 3. His ex lost her apartment. She was living in her car now. And Lucas woke up every night at 3:33 a.m. to the feeling of cold fingers brushing against his neck. He started seeing something in his peripheral vision. A shape, tall, too tall, with long limbs that bent wrong. Followed him. In his apartment. In the grocery store. On the street. Always just out of sight. Always watching. Lucas finally understood. The pact was never about giving him money. It was about transfer. Every dollar he received had been taken from someone else. Not from their bank accounts. From their lives. Their health. Their luck. Their time. And the thing that made the pact. It was feeding. Feeding on the suffering. On the chaos. And Lucas had opened the door. You're still here. Thank you. Seriously. What you're about to hear next, you won't believe it. Lucas tried everything. He donated the money. All of it. Every cent. To charities. To strangers on the street. To anyone who would take it. It didn't matter. More kept coming. He closed his bank account. Tore up the checks. threw away the cash. The next day it was back. In his wallet, in his pockets, under his pillow. He couldn't get rid of it. He went to churches, talked to priests, told them he needed help, that something was following him, that he'd made a terrible mistake. They prayed with him, gave him blessed water, told him to have faith. It didn't help, because the thing following him wasn't a demon. It was something older, something that existed in the space between wanting and having, between desperation and consequence. And it wasn't finished with him yet. Lucas stopped leaving his apartment. He covered the mirrors, kept the lights on constantly, slept with his back against the wall. But every night, at 3:33 a.m., he woke up, and every night it was closer. He could feel it now, standing at the foot of his bed, breathing, watching, waiting. One night, Lucas couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed the dish from under his bed, threw it against the wall, screamed at the empty room. "What do you want from me?" The lights flickered, and for the first time he heard it speak. Not out loud, inside his head. A voice that sounded like static and burnt meat and the moment before you fall asleep and forget who you are. It said, "You asked for abundance. I gave you abundance. Now you owe me abundance in return." Lucas fell to his knees. "Take it back," he whispered. "Take all of it. I don't want it." The voice laughed. It sounded like choking. "You cannot return what you have already consumed. The pact is sealed. And now you will pay." "With what?" Lucas sobbed. "I don't have anything left." The silence that followed was worse than the voice, because Lucas realized, in that moment, what the thing wanted. Not his money, not his possessions. Him. His time. His life. His existence. It had already taken pieces. That's why he couldn't eat. Why he couldn't sleep. Why he looked like a corpse in the mirror. It had been feeding on him all along. And soon there would be nothing left. The next morning, Lucas didn't show up for a job interview he'd finally scheduled. His mother tried calling. No answer. Carlos stopped by his apartment. Knocked. No response. The landlord opened the door 3 days later after neighbors complained about the smell. The apartment was empty. No furniture. No clothes. No food. Just burn marks on the floor in the shape of a circle. And in the center, a piece of paper. Blank except for one thing. A single line of text, written in ash. "The pact is complete." Lucas was never seen again. But here's the thing. 2 weeks after he disappeared, the forum reappeared. Same URL. Same design. Same thread. Financial pact. It works. Instructions inside. And at the bottom, a new reply, posted by a username that was just a string of numbers. "I was where you are. Broke. Desperate. Out of options. I found this ritual online and tried it as a last resort. Within a week, money started appearing. I'm not joking. I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling you it works. Do it at your own risk." The cycle continues, because desperation is infinite, and something out there knows it. This story is based on real reports found on deep web forums and anonymous testimonies. Many claim the ritual works, but no one who did it admits it publicly, because the price is something you only discover when it's too late. And you? Would you make this pact? How far would you go for money? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this disturbing story, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And don't forget to watch the last video on the channel, you won't regret it. Thank you for watching. Until next time, if there is a next time.